The stars had never seemed so quiet. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UESK Prometheus, watching the edge of the solar system through reinforced glass. Something was wrong out there. The readings didn't make sense. For 3 weeks, Earth's most advanced sensors had detected gravitational waves that shouldn't exist. They pulsed from the darkness beyond Pluto, rhythmic and deliberate. Not natural. Never natural. Every scientist who studied the data said the same thing. This was impossible. Sarah had served in the United Earth Space Command for 15 years. She'd seen mining accidents on the moon, pirate raids near the asteroid belt, and one terrible collision that killed 200 colonists on their way to Mars. But she'd never seen anything like this. The mystery at the edge of their home pulled at her mind like a whisper she couldn't quite hear. Behind her, the door hissed open. Commander James Park entered, his dark eyes troubled. He carried a tablet filled with new readings. "Captain, the anomaly is getting stronger," he said quietly. "Whatever's out there, it's not going away." Sarah took the tablet and studied the numbers. He was right. The gravitational distortions had doubled in the past 6 hours. Something massive was bending space itself at the edge of their solar system. "Take us closer," she ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know what we're dealing with." The Prometheus wasn't a warship. She was an explorer, built for long journeys into the dark. Her crew of 43 were scientists and engineers, not soldiers. But they were humanity's eyes in the void, and someone had to look. 3 days later, they found it. The ship hung in space like a broken bird, trailing atmosphere and debris. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the Prometheus. But size wasn't what made Sarah's breath catch. The design was alien. Curves where human ships had angles. Materials that seemed to drink in starlight. Technologies that had no place in human understanding. "My God," James whispered beside her. "We're not alone." The statement felt too simple for the moment. Humanity had wondered for centuries if other intelligent life existed. Now the answer floated before them, damaged and dying in the cold of space. Sarah activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. We've made first contact with an alien vessel. Stay calm, follow protocols. Science team to the bridge immediately." The next hours passed in controlled chaos. They scanned the alien ship from every angle. No weapons were active. Life support was failing. Someone inside was dying, and they had no way to help. Then the message came. It wasn't in any human language, but the computer recognized it as a structured signal. Mathematics, universal constants. A plea for help translated through numbers that any intelligent species could understand. Sarah made her decision. "Prepare a rescue team. If they're alive, we bring them home." 12 hours later, they had survivors. 3 aliens, barely clinging to life, now rested in the Prometheus medical bay. The ship's doctor worked around the clock, adapting human medicine to alien biology through trial and careful observation. The lead survivor regained consciousness on the 3rd day. He was tall and thin, with skin that shifted between blue and purple. His eyes were large and dark, filled with an intelligence that Sarah recognized immediately. This being was old, experienced, and terrified. Through the translation software they'd built from the alien ship's computers, he introduced himself. Ambassador Kelthor of the Thousand Suns Coalition. His ship had been fleeing from something he called the Vexcar Swarm. Sarah listened as Kelthor spoke, and with each word, her blood ran colder. The galaxy was at war, a war humanity knew nothing about. For thousands of years, the Coalition had monitored Earth from a distance, protecting it as a primitive world that needed time to develop. They'd watched humans split the atom, reach the moon, and colonize their solar system. They'd been patient, waiting for the day when humanity might join the galactic community. But the war had changed everything. The Vexcar Swarm came from another dimension, breaking through reality itself. They were a hive mind, consuming everything in their path. Entire civilizations had fallen. Hundreds of billions had died. "The Coalition was losing. Why didn't you contact us before?" Sarah asked, struggling to process the scale of what she was hearing. Kelthor's expression was difficult to read, but his tone carried shame. "The Council believed you were too young, too vulnerable. Your technology is centuries behind ours. We thought we were protecting you by keeping you isolated. And now we are dying," Kelthor said simply. "The Vexcar have consumed 40% of known space. Our fleets retreat daily. Our worlds burn. In 6 months, perhaps less, they will reach Coalition core space. After that, he paused. There is no after that. Sarah felt the weight of his words settle over her. Somewhere out in the galaxy, civilizations older than human history were fighting for their lives, and Earth had been sitting in ignorance, focused on their small corner of space. We want to help, Sarah said firmly. Kael'thor made a sound that the translator interpreted as sad laughter. Captain Chen, your species has not achieved faster than light travel. You have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no quantum communications. The Vexcar would sweep through your solar system in days. There is nothing you can do. The words stung because they were true. Humanity's greatest warships would be toys against the threat Kael'thor described. Their weapons were primitive. Their defenses were weak. They were children playing at war while the adults died in the dark. But Sarah had not become captain of the Prometheus by accepting defeat. Then teach us, she said. Your ship is damaged but not destroyed. Your computers still function. We're fast learners, Ambassador. Give us a chance. Kael'thor studied her for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. I will send word to the Coalition. But, Captain, you must understand what you are asking. The Vexcar show no mercy. They do not negotiate. They consume. If you join this fight, your species may not survive. If we hide, we'll die anyway, Sarah replied. At least this way, we die on our feet. The Prometheus turned toward home, carrying news that would change humanity forever. Behind them, Kael'thor composed a message to the Coalition Council, describing the strange primitive species that wanted to fight. He did not expect them to approve. The humans were too weak, too underdeveloped, too naive about the horrors they would face. But something in Captain Chen's eyes had reminded him of something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Foolish, impossible hope. Perhaps that was what the galaxy needed, even if it came from the most unlikely source. As Earth grew larger on the view screen, Sarah stood alone in the observation deck. Somewhere out in the darkness, an enemy was coming, an enemy that had destroyed civilizations humanity couldn't even imagine. The smart thing would be to hide, to hope the storm passed them by. But humanity had never been good at doing the smart thing. She activated her communicator. Command, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Prometheus. Prepare to receive first contact protocols. We're coming home and we're bringing guests. Tell the admirals we need to talk. Tell them it's about war. The United Nations emergency session had been going for 6 hours. Every nation on Earth had sent representatives. Every screen showed the same images, recordings from Kael'thor's damaged ship, star maps of burning Coalition worlds, and sensor data of the approaching threat. Admiral Marcus Webb stood at the podium, his gray hair and stern face projected onto screens worldwide. He'd fought in 3 wars during his military career, but nothing had prepared him for this. Behind him, Ambassador Kael'thor waited, his alien form a stark reminder that humanity's reality had fundamentally changed. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation is clear, Webb said, his voice rough. We are not alone in the universe. We never were, and the neighbors we never knew about are dying. He pulled up a holographic display showing the Vexcar advance, red spread across the galaxy like a disease, consuming system after system. The few green zones representing Coalition space grew smaller each day. The Coalition has been fighting for 3 years. They've lost over 1,000 worlds, billions of civilians, hundreds of military fleets. They're losing this war, and if they fall, the Vexcar will eventually reach us. A delegate from the European Union stood. Admiral, with respect, this isn't our war. The Coalition never contacted us before. Why should we risk everything for them now? Kael'thor stepped forward before Webb could respond. His translator rendered his words in dozens of languages simultaneously. Because hiding will not save you, he said quietly. The Vexcar do not negotiate. They do not stop. They consume all biological matter and convert it into more of themselves. When they finish with Coalition space, they will spread. Your solar system will be a target whether you fight or not. The only question is whether you face them alone or beside allies. The room fell silent. The truth of his words hung heavy in the air. A Chinese admiral spoke next. What can we offer? Our technology is primitive compared to yours. We don't even have faster-than-light travel. That is changing, Kael'thor replied. Captain Chen's engineers have been studying my ship for 3 months. They have made progress that I find Remarkable. On cue, Sarah Chen entered the chamber. She'd been working non-stop in the engineering labs, surviving on coffee and determination. Dark circles lined her eyes, but her voice was strong. "We've reverse-engineered the basic principles of coalition FTL drives," she announced. "Our first working prototype achieved successful faster-than-light travel 2 days ago. It's crude, but it works. More than that, our modifications made it 70% more efficient than the coalition's standard design." Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Kael'thor's expression showed genuine surprise. "How is that possible?" someone asked. Sarah smiled grimly. "Because we had to make it work with our primitive technology. We couldn't replicate their exotic matter generators, so we found alternatives. Turns out, starting from scratch with hybrid approaches creates unexpected advantages." She pulled up technical displays that made half the room's eyes glaze over. But the engineers and scientists understood. Humanity's disadvantage had become an advantage. Their lack of established technology meant they could innovate without being trapped by conventional thinking. Over the next week, every nation on Earth contributed resources to what became known as the Human Defense Initiative. Old enemies set aside differences. Resources poured into a unified military structure for the first time in human history. Shipyards worked around the clock, retrofitting existing vessels with new weapons and drives. But the Coalition Council remained skeptical. Sarah stood in the communications room, watching as Kael'thor argued with his government via quantum link. The Coalition leaders appeared as holographic projections, their various alien forms gathered in a virtual council chamber light years away. "You cannot be serious, Ambassador," High Arbiter Zenvar said. Her species resembled crystalline beings, and her voice chimed like breaking glass. "These humans lack shields, advanced weapons, proper training. They would be massacred." "They learn quickly," Kael'thor insisted. "Faster than any species I've encountered. Their engineering teams have improved my ship's systems beyond original specifications. Their military strategists have proposed tactics we never considered." Another council member, a massive creature covered in chitinous plates, made a dismissive gesture. "Tactics mean nothing against the swarm. We have centuries of military doctrine. These primitives have been fighting each other with chemical explosives and metal projectiles." "Those projectiles are remarkably effective," Kael'thor said quietly. "I observed their weapons tests. They have weaponized concepts we abandoned as too crude. Nuclear devices, kinetic kill vehicles, chemical weapons, biological agents. They fight without honor, but they fight to win. Barbaric," the crystalline arbiter said, "and ineffective against Vexkar bioarmor." "Perhaps," Kael'thor agreed. "Or perhaps we have become too civilized to fight dirty wars. The humans have not." The argument continued for hours. In the end, the Council's answer was no. Humanity could not join the war effort. They were too weak, too unprepared, too likely to die uselessly. Earth would remain under protected status, isolated and ignored while the galaxy burned. Admiral Webb received the news with characteristic stoicism. He stood in the war room surrounded by human military leaders from every nation and read the Coalition's rejection aloud. "So that's it then," said the Russian general. "They won't let us fight. They can't stop us," Webb replied. "This is our galaxy too. We don't need their permission to defend ourselves." "But Admiral, without Coalition support we're alone," someone protested. Webb's eyes hardened. "Then we've been alone before. We'll adapt." The next month passed in frantic preparation. Earth's military forces trained with new technology. Simulations ran constantly, preparing for an enemy they'd never faced. Scientists worked to understand Vexkar biology from Coalition databases. Engineers built weapons that combined human brutality with alien science. Kael'thor watched it all with growing amazement. The humans approached war like no species he'd ever encountered. They were terrified but determined. They knew they might die but prepared anyway. They took technologies meant for peaceful purposes and weaponized them without hesitation. Most striking was their creativity. Where Coalition military doctrine followed established patterns, humans improvised constantly. They tested unconventional strategies. They combined technologies in ways that violated proper engineering principles but somehow worked. They were chaos incarnate, and that chaos might be exactly what the galaxy needed. 29 days after the Coalition's rejection, the first Vexkar scouts entered the outer solar system. Alarms screamed across every human installation. 3 bioships, each the size of a small moon, emerged from faster-than-light travel near Neptune's orbit. 47 smaller harvester drones accompanied them. They moved with terrible purpose toward the inner system. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the UESC Defiance, his flagship. Around him, 22 other human warships took position. It was everything Earth had ready for combat. Everyone knew it wasn't enough. Kael'thor stood beside Webb, watching the approaching enemy with ancient fear in his eyes. "Admiral, I must tell you. The Coalition wrote your system off as lost when we detected the Vexcar approach. No reinforcements are coming. If you engage, you face them alone." Webb's jaw tightened. He thought of the 8 billion people on Earth, the millions in the colonies, the children who would never grow up if this defense failed. Then he thought of the Coalition worlds already lost, the billions already dead, and the enemy that would never stop consuming. "Then we die here," Webb said simply. "But I'll be damned if we die quietly." He opened a channel to every human ship in the fleet. "This is Admiral Marcus Webb to all vessels. Today we face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations far greater than ours. They expect us to run or die easily. Let's show them what humanity looks like when we're cornered." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We don't have their shields or their ancient weapons, but we have something they've never encountered. We have humans who are too stupid to know when we're beaten. Attack formations, people. Let's introduce these things to Earth." The Vexcar bioships moved through space like predators, their organic hulls pulsing with stolen energy from 1,000 dead worlds. They had expected another easy harvest, another primitive system to consume, another step toward total domination of this galaxy. They had not expected humanity. Admiral Webb's fleet didn't charge forward in a heroic line. They scattered like scared prey, ships breaking formation and fleeing toward Neptune's rings. To the Vexcar hive mind, it looked like cowardice, exactly what Webb wanted them to think. The bioships accelerated, their harvester drones spreading out to corral the fleeing humans. The swarm had done this 1,000 times before. Chase, capture, consume. Simple, efficient, inevitable. Then the asteroid field came alive. Hidden among the ice and rock of Neptune's outer rings, automated weapons platforms activated. Human engineers had spent 3 weeks placing them, disguising them as natural debris. Now they fired as one. Thousands of kinetic rounds and missile warheads striking the harvester drones from unexpected angles. 17 drones died in the first volley. The Vexcar hive mind registered surprise for perhaps the first time in its existence. Prey did not set traps. Prey ran and died. These creatures were doing neither. Sarah Chen commanded the Prometheus from the heart of the ambush. Her ship was never meant for combat, but her crew had mounted every weapon they could carry. Around her, other human vessels emerged from hiding, targeting the confused drones with focused fire. "Hit them while they're scattered," she ordered. "Don't give them time to regroup." The space around Neptune became a storm of violence. Human ships danced between asteroids, using the terrain like guerrilla fighters. They appeared, fired, and vanished behind cover before the Vexcar could target them effectively. It was war as the Coalition had never fought it. Messy, chaotic, brutally effective. But the 3 bioships remained. And they were learning. The largest vessel, designated Bioship Alpha by human sensors, began pulling its drones back into a defensive formation. It turned its attention away from the ambush and toward the true prize, the inner system and Earth beyond. Admiral Webb saw the shift immediately. "All ships, new priority. We cannot let those bioships reach Mars. If they get past us, everything we love dies." The Defiance broke from cover, its drives burning at maximum. Other human warships followed, abandoning the safety of the asteroid field. They had to draw the Vexcar attention, even if it meant exposing themselves. The bioships noticed. They turned their terrible weapons on the approaching fleet. What happened next would be recorded in both human and Coalition histories as one of the most brutal space battles ever witnessed. The Vexcar fired beams of condensed bioenergy that melted through human hulls like they were paper. Entire ships vaporized in seconds. Others were torn apart by organic projectiles that burrowed into their systems and exploded from within. The human fleet died. Not all at once, but steadily and horribly. The UESC Beijing exploded with all hands lost. The Singapore was cut in half, its crew dying in the vacuum. The Cairo fought on with a gaping hole in its side until its reactor went critical. But humans did not die quietly. Every ship that fell took something with it. The Beijing's captain aimed his dying vessel at a cluster of harvester drones and detonated every warhead in his arsenal. The Singapore's weapons officer stayed at her post even as her section lost pressure, firing until her fingers froze on the controls. The Cairo's engineer rerouted all remaining power to a final weapons volley before the end. Kael'thor watched from the Defiance's bridge, his body rigid with horror and awe. In coalition battles, ships retreated when severely damaged. Crews evacuated when their vessels were lost. It was logical. It preserved lives for future fights. Humans did not retreat. Even when their ships were doomed, they fired until their weapons failed. Even when death was certain, they fought for one more second of resistance. They were terrifying in their refusal to accept the inevitable. "Why don't they evacuate?" Kael'thor asked quietly. Webb didn't look away from the tactical display. Because every second they fight is another second for their brothers and sisters to get in position. Every drone they kill is one less threat to Earth. They know what they signed up for. The Admiral's voice was steady, but Kael'thor saw his hands gripping the command chair hard enough to turn his knuckles white. This human was watching his people die, and it was destroying him. But he did not waver. Sarah Chen saw her opening. While the bioships focused on the frontal assault, she'd led a small group of ships on a wide flanking maneuver. It had taken them away from the main battle, behind one of Neptune's moons, circling to approach from an unexpected angle. "Prometheus to all flanking vessels," she transmitted. "Target bioship Beta. Kael'thor says the organic ships have a weak point where they channel energy. We hit that spot with everything we have." Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Park, looked worried. "Captain, we'll have to get close. Really close. Their point defense will tear us apart." "I know," Sarah said quietly. She thought of her daughter on Earth, 8 years old and probably scared beyond reason. She thought of every child on her homeworld, depending on people like her to keep the monsters away. But if we don't try, they die anyway. At least this way, we die trying. The Prometheus accelerated to attack speed, 5 other ships forming up behind her. They burst from behind the moon at maximum velocity, weapons charging for a single devastating strike. Bioship Beta detected them too late. The Vexcar hive mind tried to redirect defensive fire, but human ships were fast and desperate. Sarah's fleet absorbed terrible damage, but they kept coming. The Madrid lost her entire port side to bioenergy beams. The Wellington's bridge was torn open, killing everyone inside, but her engines still pushed her forward. Sarah saw the weak point Kael'thor had described, a section where the bioship's organic hull pulsed with concentrated energy. It was a small target, maybe 50 meters across on a vessel the size of a city. "All weapons fire on my mark," she ordered. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 6 human ships fired as one. Missiles, railgun rounds, plasma bolts stolen from coalition technology, and one experimental weapon the engineers hadn't even named yet. The combined firepower struck the weak point simultaneously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Bioship Beta began to glow from within. The organic hull bulged and twisted. The Vexcar tried to contain the chain reaction building inside their vessel, but they'd never designed their ships to withstand attacks from inside the power distribution system. Bioship Beta exploded. Not a clean detonation, but a horrifying unfolding where the ship literally tore itself apart from competing internal pressures. Pieces of organic matter flew in every direction. The shockwave caught 3 nearby harvester drones and destroyed them instantly. Sarah allowed herself one moment of triumph before checking her damage reports. The Prometheus had taken severe hits. Life support was failing in 3 sections. Her weapons were mostly offline. But she was alive, and the enemy was down 1/3 of its capital ships. Admiral Webb saw the explosion from across the battlefield. For the first time in hours, he smiled grimly. "Good kill, Prometheus. Well done, but the battle was far from over." The remaining 2 bioships had reached the inner system. They were now between the human fleet and Earth. The strategic situation had become desperate. Webb made his decision with the cold calculation of a man who'd fought too many wars. "All remaining vessels form on the Defiance. We're going to ram straight through their formation. No fancy tactics, no clever strategies. We hit them with everything we have left." "Admiral, that's suicide," his tactical officer protested. "Yes," Webb agreed, "but it'll hurt them. And right now, hurt is all we can offer." The remaining human ships, 13 vessels in various states of damage, gathered for one final push. They formed a spearhead with the Defiance at the tip, and they charged directly at Bioship Alpha and its companion. The Vexcar did not understand. These prey creatures should be fleeing. Their fleet was shattered. Their losses were catastrophic. Yet they attacked with even greater fury than before. What the hive mind could not comprehend was human emotion. Fear that drove them forward instead of back, rage at the threat to their home, love for the people they protected, determination to make their deaths count for something. The final engagement lasted 11 minutes. Those minutes contained more violence than most civilizations experienced in years of warfare. Ships died on both sides. The human fleet was reduced to scattered survivors. But when the smoke cleared, Bioship Alpha was crippled and drifting, and its companion was destroyed. Admiral Marcus Webb died in those final minutes. A bioenergy beam cut through the Defiance's bridge, and his last words were transmitted across every human frequency. Tell them we bought them time. Make it count. The Vexcar remnants retreated, their surviving harvester drones dragging the damaged Bioship Alpha back toward deep space. They would report to the greater hive mind that this system was not easy prey, that these creatures called humans fought with unprecedented ferocity. The Coalition Council watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. High Arbiter Zenvar replayed the footage for the third time, unable to fully process what she was witnessing. The humans had fought with tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They'd used kamikaze attacks, nuclear mines, and had willingly sacrificed their ships when any reasonable species would have retreated. And they'd won. This is not possible, the Crystalline Arbiter whispered. Their technology is primitive. Their fleet was outnumbered 3-1. They should have been destroyed in the first engagement. Kael'thor stood before the council, his voice carrying a weight of absolute certainty. They did not fight like any species we know. They fought like cornered animals protecting their young, and they captured a damaged harvester drone intact. Their engineers are already dissecting it. That last piece of information sent ripples through the council. No one had successfully captured Vexcar technology before. The biomechanical construct self-destructed when damaged. Yet somehow these humans had disabled one before it could trigger its failsafe. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Neptune. Earth had mourned its dead and buried Admiral Webb with full military honors. But humanity hadn't stopped working. Every day brought new developments, new weapons, new strategies born from studying the captured drone. Sarah Chen, now promoted to Commodore, stood in what humans called the workshop. It was a massive orbital facility where human and coalition engineers worked side by side. In the center of the chamber, suspended in containment fields, was the harvester drone. A human engineer named Dr. Marcus Riley worked at a console, directing microscopic probes into the drone's organic systems. Beside him, a coalition scientist whose species resembled a floating jellyfish monitored the data with growing alarm. "This is wrong," the alien scientist said. "You cannot simply rewire Vexcar biocircuitry. The organic components will reject the new pathways." "They already rejected the pathways," Dr. Riley replied cheerfully. 3 times. "So we introduced a retrovirus that convinced the tissue to accept our modifications. It worked on the 4th attempt." The coalition scientist's translator struggled to convey her horror. "You created a virus to hack their biology? That is brilliant and terrifying." "Welcome to human engineering," Riley said with a tired grin. "We don't have your advantages, so we cheat." That philosophy had produced results that shocked the galaxy. Human scientists had weaponized Vexcar biotechnology in ways the coalition had never considered. They'd created counterviruses that disrupted hive-mind coordination. They designed ammunition that specifically targeted organic armor. They'd even built a prototype weapon that used captured Vexcar tissue against itself. The coalition had dismissed these approaches as barbaric. They probably were, but they also worked. Sarah reviewed the latest reports in her ready room. 50 new human warships were ready for deployment, each incorporating lessons from Neptune. They were faster, better armed, and crewed by people who'd trained specifically for fighting the Vexcar. Earth's industry had mobilized completely. Every nation contributed. Old hatreds seemed petty when extinction loomed. A communication request came through from Coalition High Command. Sarah accepted, and High Arbiter Zenvar appeared as a hologram. "Commodore Chen," the crystalline being said formally. "The Council has completed its review of the Neptune engagement. We were Mistaken in our assessment of your species' capabilities. Sarah waited. She'd learned that coalition politics moved slowly, weighted by centuries of procedure. The world of Tharvel Prime is under siege. Zenvar continued. 4 billion civilians. Our fourth fleet has held orbit for 8 months, but they are failing. We cannot spare reinforcements from core defense. The world will fall within weeks. She paused. We request Earth's assistance. Sarah felt the weight of that request. The coalition was officially asking humanity for help. Species that had dismissed them as primitives now needed what only humans could provide: the willingness to fight dirty and die hard. We'll send what we can, Sarah replied, but I need operational command. My people won't die following battle plans that don't account for how we fight. There was a long pause. Coalition military structure was ancient and rigid. Giving command to an outsider, especially a human, was unprecedented. But Zenvar had watched the Neptune recordings. She'd seen what human tactics could accomplish. Agreed, the Arbiter said finally. The Coalition Fourth Fleet will coordinate with your forces under your command. Do not make us regret this trust. 2 weeks later, Sarah led the first human expeditionary fleet into Coalition space. 50 human warships, supported by supply vessels and a mobile repair station. It was the largest force humanity had ever sent beyond their solar system. The journey took 5 days at maximum FTL speed. Sarah spent that time studying everything the Coalition had on Tharvel Prime. The planet was beautiful, with purple oceans and continents covered in crystalline forests. 4 billion people called it home, representing 3 different Coalition species living in harmony. The Vexcar wanted to consume them all. The fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Tharvel system. Sarah's sensors immediately showed her a nightmare. 8 Vexcar bioships surrounded the planet, supported by hundreds of harvester drones. The Coalition Fourth Fleet, 26 ships, held a defensive position in high orbit. They were battered, low on ammunition, and clearly at the end of their strength. Admiral Vareth, the Coalition fleet commander, appeared on her screen. He was from a warrior species, heavily armored and naturally aggressive. His skepticism of human capabilities showed clearly in his body language. You brought 50 ships to fight this? He asked bluntly. The Vexcar have overwhelming numbers. What can your primitive vessels accomplish? Sarah smiled coldly. She dealt with plenty of arrogant officers in her career. Admiral, my primitive vessels destroyed 3 bioships and 47 drones at Neptune. Watch and learn. She cut the transmission and opened a channel to her fleet. All ships, this is Commodore Chen. We're not here to play by Coalition rules. We're here to save a planet using every dirty trick we know. Break into hunter-killer groups. Target harvesters first, bioships second. Stay mobile, stay unpredictable, and make them chase us through terrain. The human fleet scattered immediately, breaking into groups of 5 ships each. They didn't form traditional battle lines. Instead, they moved like wolf packs, targeting vulnerable drones and using the planet's moon as cover. Admiral Vareth watched in disbelief as human ships performed maneuvers that violated standard tactical doctrine. They flew too close to the planet's gravity well. They used debris fields as weapons. They fired while executing turns that should have been impossible. One group, led by Captain Rodriguez in the Manila, baited a cluster of harvester drones into pursuing them through a satellite debris field. The drones, larger and less maneuverable, collided with debris. The Manila's group turned and destroyed the disoriented enemy with focused fire. Another group used what humans called the hammer and anvil. They appeared to flee from a bioship, drawing it toward a seemingly undefended section of space. When the bioship pursued, it ran into a minefield the humans had deployed hours earlier. The explosion didn't destroy the bioship, but it damaged it severely enough that follow-up attacks could finish it. Kyle Thor, serving as liaison aboard Sarah's flagship, watched the battle with growing amazement. Your people fight without honor, he said quietly. Honor doesn't save lives, Sarah replied, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. Results do. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships took terrible losses. The Jakarta was destroyed, protecting a damaged coalition vessel. The Stockholm sacrificed itself to stop a harvester swarm from reaching the planet's surface. But for every human ship that fell, they took multiple enemy vessels with them. Admiral Vareth began to understand. He'd spent months fighting a defensive battle, trying to preserve his fleet while protecting the planet. The humans weren't concerned with preservation. They fought to win, accepting casualties as the price of victory. Slowly, grudgingly, Vareth began coordinating with the human fleet instead of working separately. Coalition ships provided heavy fire support while human vessels conducted rapid strikes. The combined force proved more effective than either could manage alone. Sarah saw an opportunity. 3 bioships had clustered together, trying to concentrate their fire on the Coalition flagship. It was a tactically sound move, but it left them vulnerable to a specific type of attack. "All available human ships form on my position," she ordered. "We're going to try something new." 12 human vessels gathered near the Manila. They'd been equipped with experimental weapons developed from studying the captured drone. Organic disruptors that specifically targeted Vexcar bioship coordination nodes. "This is going to hurt us as much as them," Sarah told her crew. "These weapons aren't tested. They might overload our systems, but if they work, we can disrupt the hive mind connection to those bioships." Her tactical officer looked worried. "And if they don't work?" "Then we die trying," Sarah said simply. "On my mark, fire!" 12 ships fired their disruptors simultaneously. The beam weapons struck the bioships with energy that looked like purple lightning. The galaxy had changed in the 6 months since Tharvel Prime. Humanity's victory hadn't just saved one world, it had sparked hope across Coalition space. Worlds that had prepared for evacuation now fortified their defenses. Fleet commanders who'd accepted defeat began studying human tactics. The phrase "fight like humans" became a rallying cry for those who refused to surrender. But hope alone wouldn't win the war. The Vexcar swarm controlled half the known galaxy now. Trillions had died, hundreds of civilizations had been consumed, and Coalition intelligence had finally located what they'd been searching for since the war began. The central nexus, the heart of the hive mind itself. Sarah stood in the Coalition war room, surrounded by admirals and generals from a dozen species. The holographic display showed a star system deep in Vexcar territory, pulsing with bioenergy signatures. The nexus was there, a massive organic construct that coordinated the entire swarm across light years of space. High Arbiter Zenvar addressed the assembled commanders. "We have one chance. If we destroy the nexus, the Vexcar will lose coordination. Without the hive mind, they become scattered, vulnerable. We can reclaim our territory and drive them back to whatever hell they came from." "And if we fail?" asked a Coalition admiral. "Then we lose everything," Zenvar replied simply. "This is our final strike. Every ship we have, every weapon, every soldier. We commit everything to this assault." Sarah studied the tactical data. The Nexus was protected by over 2,000 bioships and countless harvester drones. Coalition intelligence estimated they could field 500 warships for the attack. The math was brutal. Even with human tactics, the casualties would be catastrophic. "We'll be outnumbered 4-1, Sarah said quietly. "Those aren't winning odds." Kelthor, standing beside her, touched her shoulder gently. "When has that ever stopped your species? You fought at Neptune when outnumbered. You won at Tharvel Prime against impossible odds. Now we ask you to fight one more time, knowing that victory may cost everything." Sarah looked around the room at the assembled Coalition leaders. These beings represented thousands of years of civilization. They'd built wonders humans could barely imagine. They'd achieved peace among species that should have been enemies, and now they were preparing to die fighting an enemy that shouldn't exist. "Earth will contribute 200 ships," Sarah announced. "It's 40% of our total fleet. Every vessel we can spare without leaving our home defenseless." The room fell silent. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for less than a year. They were still the newest, most primitive members. Yet they were offering nearly half the assault force. "Your sacrifice will be remembered," Zenvar said softly. Sarah smiled grimly. "We're not sacrificing anything. We're fighting for our future, for everyone's future. Let's make sure there's someone left to do the remembering." The fleet assembled at Coalition Staging Point Sigma 7, a massive space station that served as the launch point for the final assault. 500 warships from dozens of species, representing the last major combat force the Coalition could field. Among them, 200 human vessels, their crews ready for what everyone knew would be the hardest battle ever fought. Sarah walked through her flagship's corridors, visiting crew members before the jump. She'd learned from Admiral Webb that soldiers fought harder when they knew their commander saw them as people, not just numbers. In engineering, she found Dr. Riley making final adjustments to the experimental weapons. How are they holding up? she asked. Riley looked exhausted but determined. The disruptors worked at Tharvel, but we're pushing them harder this time. Some ships might overload. I've done everything I can to prevent it. That's all anyone can ask, Sarah said. Get some rest before the jump. I need you sharp. In the medical bay, she found the doctors preparing for mass casualties. In the hangar, fighter pilots ran last-minute checks on their craft. In the mess hall, soldiers from 3 different species shared a final meal together, human rations mixing with alien cuisine. War had made them family. Kalthor found her on the observation deck, staring at the assembled fleet. Are you ready for this? He asked. No, Sarah admitted. I keep thinking about everyone who won't come home. The families who'll receive death notifications. The children who'll grow up without parents. But if we don't fight, they all die anyway. At least this way, we're choosing to stand. Your species has taught the galaxy something we'd forgotten, Kalthor said. That survival means being willing to pay terrible prices. That freedom isn't free. That sometimes the only path forward is through darkness. The fleet jumped together, 500 ships entering FTL toward the heart of enemy territory. The journey took 8 hours. Sarah spent that time reviewing the battle plan with her commanders. The strategy was simple because it had to be. Strike hard, strike fast, and don't stop until the Nexus was destroyed or they were all dead. They dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Nexus system and saw hell waiting for them. The Vexcar had been expecting them. Over 2,000 bioships filled the system, arranged in defensive formations around a massive organic structure at the system's center. The Nexus was enormous, larger than most moons, pulsing with bioenergy that hurt to look at. This was the brain of the swarm, the source of its terrible coordination. All ships, this is Commodore Chen. Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. Today we end this war. No retreats, no second chances. We go forward and we don't stop. For every world that's fallen, for every life that's been lost, for the future of every species in this galaxy. We stand together. The response came from 500 ships in a dozen languages. We stand together. The battle began. It was violence on a scale that defied description. The Vexcar attacked in overwhelming numbers, their bioships firing energy beams that could vaporize warships in seconds. The Coalition and human forces fought with desperate fury, employing every tactic they'd learned in years of warfare. Human ships led suicide runs through Vexcar formations, breaking their defensive lines so Coalition heavy cruisers could exploit the gaps. Coalition vessels provided covering fire while human fighters conducted boarding actions against bioships. Species that had never fought together before coordinated like they'd trained for years. The casualties were horrific. In the first hour, the Coalition lost 90 ships. The USC Horizon exploded with all hands. The Coalition flagship took a direct hit that killed half her crew. The Manila, veteran of Tharvel Prime, was torn apart by harvester drones while protecting a damaged alien cruiser. But they kept pushing forward. Every ship that fell took enemies with it. Every sacrifice opened paths for others to advance. The combined fleet fought not like separate forces but as one unified army. Sarah's flagship, the Prometheus II, led a spearhead of 30 ships directly toward the Nexus. Around her, vessels died one by one. The Stockholm II exploded, protecting her flank. The Beijing III crashed into a bioship to clear their path. But still they advanced. Kalthor worked at the tactical station, his hands moving faster than Sarah had ever seen. I'm detecting a pattern in the Nexus defenses. There's a coordination lag when it tries to control too many vessels simultaneously. If we can force it to split its attention, we might create an opening. How do we split its attention? Sarah asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be pleasant. We need simultaneous attacks from multiple vectors, at least 5 strike forces all engaging major targets at once. It'll force the Nexus to coordinate responses on multiple fronts. Sarah opened a fleet-wide channel. All remaining forces break into 5 attack groups. Designations Alpha through Echo. Each group selects a priority target and engages simultaneously on my mark. We're going to overload the hive mind. Coalition Admiral Vareth took command of Alpha Group. A crystalline Coalition commander led Beta. A human captain, named Williams, commanded Gamma. Each group represented what remained of once mighty fleets. Groups report ready, came the responses. Then, let's end this, Sarah said. All groups attack. 5 separate battles erupted simultaneously across the Nexus system. The hive mind tried to coordinate responses to all of them, but Kael'thor had been right. The coordination lag was noticeable. Bioships responded slower. Harvester drones showed confusion in their movement patterns. Sarah pressed the advantage. Prometheus group full acceleration toward the Nexus. Hit it with everything we have. 12 ships accelerated toward the massive organic structure. The Nexus itself began to glow, channeling energy for what looked like a devastating defensive weapon. But Sarah had expected this. Human engineers had designed a solution. All ships fired disruptors on my mark. The 12 vessels fired their organic disruptors directly at the Nexus. The purple energy beam struck the structure's surface, and something incredible happened. The Nexus began to convulse. The hive mind's coordination disrupted across the entire system. Bioships stopped responding to commands. Harvesters drifted aimlessly. "It's working," Kael'thor shouted. "The disruptors are interfering with its neural pathways." But the Nexus wasn't destroyed yet. It was wounded, confused, but still functional. They needed something more. Sarah made her decision. All ships retreat to safe distance. Prometheus will complete the attack alone.